that those lines have been erased lightly with a kneaded eraser, I'm going to start laying down the lines. This time I'll use a darker pencil. Currently I'm using this thing, it's called a Murata Black Warrior. It's a F2.5. And F is kind of, it's darker, but it doesn't shed so much lead like an HB. But it's similar. It's almost as dark as an HB, a little cleaner. So that's why I like to use this. So tape down my page so it doesn't move. And I got this vertical, all these vertical lines are all going to be parallel. Now I need to find a vanishing point. So I'm going to pick the lines that I like the most, one towards the bottom and one towards the top. And I'm going to lightly sketch this in just to see if that's the angle I want. So you can see some of these lines, they kind of all aim towards a point because I already had the vanishing point in mind. Now I just need to figure out which one's the best. Because this I had the top, so I put the vanishing point here. But that changes the angle of these other buildings. So those lines intersect right there. That's my vanishing point. And if I wanted to find a third vanishing point over here, I would take this line across, and theoretically this would be my horizon. So I would just take this all the way across my table. Luckily, I only need 1 point perspective. So I'll just use this horizontal. So maybe you can kind of see how the buildings are starting to take shape. Use a darker, slightly thicker, heavier line on the outside of the building and maybe a thinner line on the inside of the building. So you have these inner lines and these outer contour lines, and that's kind of how comic book drawing works, is simplified shape, concentrating on the outer contour line kind of makes things understandable to the eye. So now, I mean, it's just going through and lining up all these buildings. The good news is that you get faster with this with time. Perspective is really simple, you know. 1 point, 2 point, 3 point perspective. It would only take me about 5 minutes to teach someone how to do perspective. But as you'll find out if you try to draw a comic book page, for whatever reason, actually doing it is a lot harder than it looks. And it takes a little while to get used to actually implementing all the perspective theory that you learn very quickly. So you can see this method of drawing lightly with an H pencil first and then coming back. The darker pencil enables you to keep the page cleaner, and because he's drawn in here, I know where to stop these lines, whereas if it was still in the rough stage, if I had done everything at the same time in the rough stage, or in one stage, all these lines would run together until I figured out exactly where everything was going to be. If you remember, this figure completely changed before it was totally, so if I had figured out all my perspective lines around this figure, then when I erased all that, I would have lost all that time and had to fix everything, find my vanishing points again, and it would take a lot of time. You might see how that building kind of shifted because the lines weren't that accurate before. Another thing that you have to deal with constantly with perspective, especially when you're drawing cityscapes and buildings and whatnot, is the placing things, evenly placing windows, making sure everything looks the same size. Like if I'm going to divide this up into even spaces, there's a way to measure it so that they're perfectly even. But with experience and laziness, I just kind of eyeball it. So I've been working on this for a while, and you can see it coming along. I just got to something that I think might be helpful for perspective, which is everything's lining up on this vanishing point over here, and we determined our horizon would be here. I'm drawing on this building, and there are going to be some lines. It's like a triangle shape. If it was seen from above, it would be a triangle shaped building. So these lines, instead of going straight back here like everything else, they're going to go off to a different vanishing point. So the way you find those is you just follow this line back to wherever your horizon is. So there's this vanishing point. And now those lines all go back to a common vanishing point. Another thing you might look at is these cylinders down here. Pretty easy way to do circles in perspective is draw a box around circles so that the outside edge would be on this line. So these boxes will define a shape. If you use a template, find the angle, they're all by degrees. Find one that'll work. Some other ones here. It looks like this one's pretty close. Might not be able to see it from there, but want it to fit inside that square you drew in perspective. That becomes your circle in perspective. And then you erase those inner lines that you used to build it. And you're left with a little cylinder in perspective. Or if you can just eyeball it, that works too. I hope you enjoyed this look at me drawing perspective. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me on my blog, leoaks.blogspot.com, and I'll try to answer them.